Hello and welcome to Season 2 of The Deep End. My name is Ariana Staten. It's been so long since we last released an episode that I had enough time to defeat the Spider King Roshnok with the armies of good faith. We had to stomp on the egg sacs to prevent the spider births and suck the fluid out for its nutrients. But this isn't about me. In this episode, we will be talking about Northwestern Greek Life, an institution that 40% of students have been in, including myself, and a huge part of the Northwestern social scene. We will specifically be talking about the chapters under the Northwestern Panhellenic Association, or PHA, and the Fraternity Council, or IFC, the boards that respectively oversee Northwestern's sorority and fraternity chapters. Northwestern also has a multicultural Greek council, but we won't be tackling those organizations in this piece given their different structure and mission. PHA and IFC Greek Life is split into frats for the guys and sororities for the gals, both of which are basically fun little alcohol and paying for friends clubs, each beholden to something called nationals or internationals, which, as far as I can tell, is just a group of old white people who are addicted to making teenagers fuck. The idea is that these Greek organizations are places for students to have fun, make lifelong connections, and grow into young adults ready to take on the world. And I'm sure that some people have had that positive experience with Greek life, the same way I'm sure that some people really liked Hitler's paintings. But in all seriousness, if you are a Northwestern student or alum who had a positive experience in Greek life, we urge you to reflect on how your identity might have influenced your perspective and bear with us as we lay out the institutional issues that make reform impossible. Because the fact of the matter is that Greek life, specifically Northwestern Greek life, is a racist, classist institution that systemically excludes and endangers students, reinforces the heteronormative gender binary, and creates a culture of sexual violence. It's a system that Northwestern administration has the power to delegitimize and simply won't. This is a funny comedy show. Let's dive in. Let's start with Fraternity Rush, the process through which fraternities acquire new initiates, or pledges. It's an opaque process as there is no sorting hat to magically place everyone into fraternities, but if there was, you probably wouldn't want to wear it. The actual process is much more drawn out and subjective than any sort of instantaneous jizz magic. Sorry, I meant hat magic. Jizz magic is what ruined my 4th grade birthday party. Fraternity Rush is supposed to happen the first week of winter quarter, but every fraternity on campus starts rushing boys in the fall in a process known as dirty rushing. Over the 10 weeks in fall quarter, students attend Sunday dinners to mingle with fraternity brothers as well as bar events and parties thrown by respective IFC chapters. At the start of winter quarter, most, but not all, students receive bids from fraternities, but before being considered a full-fledged brother, they must prove their worth and girth as a new initiate, which brings us to the topic of hazing. Obviously, every frat is against hazing, but what organization is outwardly pro-hazing? The Catholic Church wasn't journalism. This external condemnation of hazing doesn't change the reality for many pledges at Northwestern. As articulated by a former member of Northwestern ZBT, quote, "I found that the anti-hazing talks were so funny because we would have an anti-toxic masculinity talk with our pledge master, and then that night he was there doing bad stuff to us. And that bad stuff can be really dangerous. Hazing at NU can vary widely from heavy drinking and physical abuse to sharing your trauma in a circle as you pass around a talking stick. Regardless of form, hazing creates an unhealthy power dynamic between pledges and active members. There seems to be a conception at Northwestern that hazing isn't that big of a problem, that Northwestern isn't like those other schools. But the reality is that most frats at Northwestern haze in some form. Frat alumni know it, students definitely know it, and the university allegedly does not know it. So if hazing puts new pledges in physical and emotional danger, why would anyone join a fraternity? Well, here's a real quote from one of our survey respondents that pretty much sums it up. Got hazed pretty hard. Almost had to eat a poo. Fortunately, it wasn't that bad. Got to have lots of sex with beautiful women thanks to my frat, even though I myself am overall like a 4 on a good day. How charming. And the university allows frats to act with little to no oversight outside of requiring members to take online anti-hazing courses that basically just say hazing is wrong, which is about as effective as a pledge repeatedly saying, I'm not eating a poo while eating a poo. Okay, so maybe fraternities are bad, but sororities offer safe all-female spaces that allow women to uplift each other in a positive way, right? No? Fuck. To understand sororities as they exist today, it's helpful to look at their history. That's right, I'm talking about the good old days when you had to slaughter the Canada goose with your own bare hands. Historically, at co-ed colleges and universities, women were routinely marginalized and treated with less potential than their male counterparts, so they needed affinity spaces. As an article in Time magazine explains, quote, women had a mission to prove that they could hack it and needed support from one another academically and socially in order to make sure that happened. Hence, sororities. Yay! Feminism! The end. Just kidding. No fairy tale actually ends with feminism. You think Cinderella was happy after marrying Prince Charming? No, she was fucking miserable. Fuck you, Prince Charming. Bippity boppity be a better husband. So how does sorority culture hold up in 2021? During Rush, prospective new members known as P&Ms go through an intense and emotionally draining week of socialization that often revolves repeated rejection, which can feel very personal. In fact, men on this campus joke about how badly they want to camp out in Norris during sorority rush to watch girls cry. Isn't that funny? That's so funny. Look at me laugh at how funny that is. Ha. I'm crying. Men are so funny. Why isn't a man hosting this right now? They are so funny, and I love them so much. Over the last 6 months, the Deep End conducted 2 surveys of several hundred students about their experiences with Greek life and the rush process. While fraternities let members socialize casually all fall, as one female respondent complained, quote, for girls it's much more, well, rushed. They get 1 week to try and learn the same things guys get to learn over the course of a whole quarter. It doesn't seem fair. The rush process for women is entirely based on short, forced conversations where P&Ms rotate through active members of each sorority in a human puff-puff pass. This makes it hard to place an emphasis on personality and interests, and instead, women are often judged on what they wear or how physically attractive they are. For many sororities, active members are forced to rate the individuals they talk to on a numeric scale. Basically, you take a human being and you turn them into a number and maybe a fun little comment. As one survey respondent explains, 5 grueling nights of rating amazing women out of 5 is degrading for both the P&M and the active member. I left the recruitment process feeling exhausted, frustrated, and honestly manipulated. The recruitment process is sounding a lot like my parents' relationship. So for girls, the pressure of these short interactions and the objectifying rating system maybe isn't the best thing ever, but I wish there was a way to sum up how this makes girls feel. If only one could articulate the words and the feeling of, oh, we have a quote? It fucking sucks. I guess that's pretty clear. But more than just preventing small talk from turning into big talk, the shallowness of sorority rush requires quick decision-making by sororities, which inevitably perpetuates racial bias. These Greek organizations are historically and predominantly white, which can put non-white P&Ms in a situation where they don't even see anyone who looks like them in the room. Other times, Greek organizations only pair up non-white P&Ms with non-white active members. As one survey respondent recounted, quote, I would look around me and count the number of non-white passing POC around me, and I could see some of them counting too. The only difference between state and NU sororities is that NU wants to appear diverse. Another respondent described Rush as a sea of white. Felt like I was in Denmark. The only time someone should feel like they're in Denmark on bid night is if bid night is a part of the Danish reboot of The Amazing Race, Det Fantastique Lob. I cannot believe Frasier and Frasier lost to Frasier and Frasier. If only they had eaten those Rector Schneegels a little bit faster. Another survey respondent was even told that they would make a great diversity edition. That's just saying, call me Chuck E. Cheese because you're my token. So it comes as no surprise that people of color opt out of rushing and pledging. As Natalie Chun, Gamma Phi Beta's former education vice president, put it, the number of deactivations that we see are disproportionately people of color. People who drop during recruitment, people who don't go through recruitment in the first place because they don't feel comfortable or safe in those spaces. And for those of you who think that your sorority or fraternity is different because it's working to become more diverse, those efforts, which may be well-intentioned, are simply not enough to fix a fundamentally exclusionary system. For example, some sororities and fraternities have appointed diversity and inclusion chairs to educate their members, but a lack of actual diversity and inclusion has led to too many white students taking on this role. Putting rich white people in charge of diversity and inclusion is like putting a giraffe in charge of saving the Apollo 13 astronauts. Like, she could do it, and she might be our only option, but I think we can all agree that she doesn't have the lived experience to effectively execute her job. And, yeah, you heard me. She. Throw away your misconceptions of who a giraffe-astronaut can be. On the flip side, D&I chairs shouldn't be the only exec position that's reserved for Black and brown members. It isn't Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Students of color shouldn't be limited, as they often are, to token roles that force them to relive potential trauma. And even if a Greek organization has a fucking fantastic D&I chair, racism in Greek life is not just interpersonal, it's systemic. Among students, each sorority and fraternity has a reputation and a place within a socially constructed tier system. And it is no coincidence that the top-tier sororities and fraternities at Northwestern tend to be the whitest and the wealthiest. Not only are Greek organizations financially and racially exclusive, they rely on financial and racial exclusivity for their social standing. Greek life also upholds a fabricated gender binary through its establishment of fraternities versus sororities, men versus women, Wanda versus Cosmo, the two genders. From my own experience in a sorority, people assume that you're straight and identify as a woman no matter how you present, and 90% of the conversations I overheard were about which guy we were pegging. That fucking sucks. Literally, in a house of 0 men, almost none of the conversations I overheard passed the Bechdel test. Everything circles back to what are the men doing, and how can we fit a particular mold so that these crusty fuckers want us? There is no room for expression outside of the traditional gender binary and heteronormative values. Many sororities have explicit bylaws indicating that members must be assigned female at birth, and others require that members identify as female and use she/her pronouns exclusively. So, despite how open-minded a local chapter may be, they are prohibited from recruiting for gender diversity. This creates an environment where some people are either completely excluded from the most dominant social scene on campus, or can't fully express their true selves within these organizations. Even when individual trans and non-binary folk are allowed in, the system as a whole is exclusive because it doesn't acknowledge reality. Gender isn't binary. It doesn't even fucking exist. Therefore, a binary system unfairly benefits those who fit neatly into traditional ideas of male and female. Now, as my professor said to me at the beginning of the first class in my Intro to Classism class, we need to talk about class. Socioeconomic status is a huge part of the Rush process and Greek life as a whole. Our survey of 167 undergrad students, 79.3% of respondents cited exclusivity based on finances as one of the 3 biggest issues with the Rush process. This partly has to do with the idea of cultural capital, which means that people are most intimately familiar with the preferences and behaviors of their own socioeconomic class. When 2 women sit down to have their Quibi episode-length conversation at Rush, it is significantly easier for them to connect if they share the same social status, perpetuating a cycle of classism within the Greek organizations. If you both have the same pair of diamond-encrusted Uggs, you'll have something to talk about. But if you come from different backgrounds, you're not going to have that instant Ugg connection. One of our survey respondents brought up how, quote, another friend I had who went to a public school told someone in Kappa that she went to public school, and the active member looked at her as if she had never heard of a public school before. Which is ridiculous. The only reason you should have never heard of public school before is if you're in Kappa. Yeah, well, I guess you're good then. That's not to mention how Greek organizations have specific attributes they look for. According to a list distributed by Pi-Phi's national organization, they want PNMs who are classy or eloquent. Come on. That's just saying the quiet part out loud. And you can't forget dues, a huge barrier for low-income students. Dues vary amongst organizations, leaving the low-income students who are even able to rush extremely limited in their options. As one survey respondent put it, The one friend I had that was low income that rushed would look at the predicted sorority dues and try to rank the cheapest sororities because she knew she could not afford more expensive ones. Students who want to join Greek life should not be forced to choose between fit and finances. That's what marriage is for. That man is a corpse. In addition to dues being prohibitively expensive, Greek life members don't always know where their money is actually going. As Natalie Chun describes it, quote, "There is a political action committee called the Frat PAC, which donates to political candidates. A lot of Democrats, but a lot of Republican candidates as well. Our chapter was really upset that our money might be going to a candidate we really would not want to support." So students are often unknowingly supporting political candidates who they may not believe in without any choice. It's like the time you guiltily bought the Chick-fil-A spicy chicken sandwich and you couldn't look your bestie Becky and her girlfriend in the eye for an entire month. And this all gets so much worse when you start thinking about POC and LGBTQ Greek life students who are essentially paying for their political rights to be stripped away. Sure, that sounds fun for some hanky-panky Hunger Games roleplay, but when it's real life... Just listen to what Natalie was told when she asked Gamma Phi Beta Internationals if her dues were going towards Frat Pack. They said, "We can't promise you where your money is, where that money is coming from. We can't promise that none of it came from dues. We can't really distinguish what comes from where." The only time you want to hear the phrase, "we can't really distinguish what comes from where," is at an orgy. Can we scratch that? Scratch that right now. Another portion of dues goes towards insurance, which is essentially a scam. According to David Eastlick, an expert witness for fraternity law, for years no insurance companies were willing to insure fraternities. In fact, they listed frats as the 7th worst insurance risk right after nuclear waste dumps. That's not a joke. The Geico Gecko really went to Phi Phi's basement and then a nuclear waste dump and was like, too close to call. In response, fraternities decided to create their own insurance. Today, there are only 2 businesses responsible for fraternity liability, both run by Greek alumni. It's like some fucked up PBS marketing campaign. Frat Insurance. Paid by frat bros, for frat bros like you. Fuck yeah. David went on to tell us that these companies build their policies to primarily insure the national chapter and pay out minimally for student actions. They don't have to pay for legal costs or damages if any undergrad, charter, or chapter gets sued, unless they get a special certificate. And even then, the national chapter doesn't have to pay if it's bodily injury or personal property, and the claim includes an allegation that they were negligent, which it usually does. Before, if Chad lost a hand, he could still get compensation from the fraternity. Nowadays, Chad won't be getting a penny, and is soft for complaining. On top of that, that was Chad's masturbation hand, so soft all around. We also spoke to Doug Fireberg, a longtime attorney who referred to Greek life insurance practice as, and we're quoting here, a sham defense to avoid litigation. It doesn't get much clearer than that. So the insurance students are paying for doesn't protect them, it protects Greek life organizations. Fraternities and sororities have a myriad of tactics when it comes to dodging liability. As David explains, their response to hazing and alcohol abuse has generally been to position themselves as educational and provide training and resources for chapters. Thus, the organizations assume no liability because these programs are not really enforceable. Basically, if national organizations actually tried to prevent hazing, sexual assault, or other abuses, they could be sued when those things actually happen, which would cost them a lot of money. Furthermore, these national organizations are large bureaucracies and they use their structure to their advantage, moving around any liability internally. Even when speaking to a president or an executive director, they might push blame on some short-term volunteer or someone that doesn't even work there anymore. That's what crime syndicates do. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were living in the Godfather cinematic universe. And you might be asking, but wouldn't Northwestern be doing more to ensure that justice is served? You'd think that Northwestern cares about safety and wants what's best for their students, but okay, let's be real, no one was thinking that. But it's strange to remember that that was actually supposed to be their jobs at some point. Weird. Anyways, Northwestern actually doesn't have an incentive to call their fraternities out. Why? Well, for one, alums from Greek life are oftentimes the highest paying donors to the university. And while you might think that these alums would be traumatized by the time they had to reenact the plot of Lord of the Flies, they're too blinded by that purple pride to hate on the good old days. This same lack of accountability and the infrastructure of these organizations, specifically fraternities, enables a culture of sexual violence at Northwestern. In a survey conducted by the Deep End when asked to select the 3 biggest issues with Greek life, 144 out of 167 respondents, that's 86%, put sexual violence and assault in their top 3. Only 86%. The other 14% probably cited that their main concern was too many uggos. So now let's imagine that we're back in fall freshman year. Your dub is dumb group chat is blowing up. You all have to go out together and solidify the squad or lose these friendships forever. But where do you go? Evanston closed at 6 p.m. Your RA is a square, and you know sororities can't have parties. But what's this? Out of the fog of teenage hormones and jewel smoke, yes, a glorious frat house. And when you arrive at the door, you are greeted by a sweaty little troll who asks you riddles like, how many brothers you know? And, you a human female? Should you gain entrance, you will enjoy the hospitality of a sunless room where the kindly gonads have full reign over the volume of Mo Bamba, what and how much you drink, and which doors are locked. This system is set up to fail. Due to insurance reasons, sororities can't throw their own parties, so if people want to drink and participate in social life on campus, they have to do it in spaces entirely controlled by men. Literally in their homes. Frats specifically control the ratio of women to men at their parties. And it's not because they want some female besties, it's because they want a better chance at sex. The university knowingly puts teenage boys in control of who pours drinks, who lets people in and out, and who, quote-unquote, manages risks at parties. That's like if our country let Mike Pence manage a global pandemic. No. It's like if social media companies had free reign over our psychology with no oversight. Let's press on. And this isn't just a social norm. These are the rules. We are behaving the way we were all intended to engage with Greek life on campus. The university seems to think of sexual assault in Greek life like it's just scraped knees at a trampoline park. Sure, some kids are going to get hurt, but more importantly, the boys will have a blast. The most infamous case study for how Northwestern administration neglected to take action when faced with sexual assault was with Sigma Alpha Epsilon, SAE, known among students as sexual assault expected. On January 21st, 2017, the Sexual Harassment Prevention Office at Northwestern received a report that 4 female students had been given a date rape drug at the SAE house. The university opened an investigation, and nearly 2 months after the initial report, it announced that no disciplinary action would be taken against SAE for the alleged sexual assaults and druggings. In April 2018, the university instead suspended SAE for hosting parties and providing alcohol to minors. Frats with alcohol policy violations get suspended swiftly and decisively. There's a process for it. It takes a criminal investigation for frats with sexual assault allegations to be suspended. That's like if the trampoline park closed for a month because someone spilled their soda, but was business as usual when a severed hand was found in the ball pit. Oh, shit. I'm sorry. I meant when a severed hand was allegedly found in the ball pit. According to the Department of Justice, 80% of sexual violence cases on college campuses go completely unreported. And according to Northwestern Office of Sexual Assault Prevention, only 10% of the reports of sexual misconduct against students go through a formal resolution, and of those, only 2/3 were found responsible. To be clear, that's 4 out of every 300 cases. This means abusers largely do not face consequences. It's gotten to the point where some students feel their only recourse is sharing experiences via the Twitter account @NUPredators to hold assaulters on this campus accountable. And when frats do take sexual assault allegations seriously, it's usually all about removing the member in question from the organization, which obviously needs to happen, but completely ignores the frequency this happens. At some point, fraternities and the university need to look at this and make major changes, which they haven't done. If people keep taking a shit in the middle of your trampoline park, wouldn't you start to wonder if you should maybe change the please shit here sign? And we've all heard the argument that trampoliners will be trampoliners, but if you close the fucking trampoline park, It makes it a lot harder for those boys to harass and assault the women and men on this campus. This survey response sums it up pretty well. Supporting Greek life supports a community endorsing rape, sexual assault, and harassment. Although not every member of a fraternity is a rapist, all members of fraternities and sororities must assume some blame for the community they have created and support. Greek life is, to put it eloquently, complete and utter poopy. So, what should we do? Well, just like the Deep End's policy of having me host every fucking episode, we could either end the tradition forever or hope it improves. Hey! Basically, the people who know Greek life is fucked and want to do something about it are in two camps. There are those who want to reform the system, believing that with some effort Greek life can be made equitable, and those who believe there is no saving the system and that it must be abolished. And to the 10% of you from our survey who want neither, Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life Travis Martin has some words for you.
That concerns me because and we've been very clear in our office around to say neither is, from our perspective, problematic, for lack of better words.
To give you all some context on the popularity of these two camps, here is the Abolish NU Greek Life Instagram page, which has 3,631 followers and 332 posts based on anonymous submissions. And here is the Reform Greek Life NU page, which has 60 followers and 6 posts. In terms of popularity among Northwestern students, Abolition is like Ariana Grande, the singing pop star, and Reform is like Ariana Grande, the singing Starbucks cup that attacks me in my dreams. Greek life reform has been happening for decades, but time and time again it becomes clear that you can't reform a system that was fundamentally designed to exclude. Greeks Against Discrimination was established almost 6 decades ago, and much to the surprise of Morty Shapiro, racism did not end in the 60s. Fraternity recruitment actually went way down in the 60s and stayed down until the modern fraternity era began in the early 80s. The experts we talked to cited the 1978 movie Animal House as a huge driver for fraternity recruitment. There's a whole host of movies like it, which reinforce the ideas of fraternities as playgrounds for entitled white men. And that's a really powerful recruitment tool. If fraternities can't offer unlimited sex and unregulated party power to the members, they might struggle to get people to join. So Nationals doesn't really want to change the culture. They rely on the fraternity mythos to keep making money. And even if one chapter decides to spend their time reading poetry and sincerely reflecting on the treatment of women, that chapter's existence is made financially possible by the student dues of thousands of racist, sexist assholes. While local chapters at Northwestern might want to be more progressive, their national bylaws often restrict them or bog them down with bureaucratic processes. Equitable reforms could require national organizations to take on legal liability, which is something their insurance policies won't allow them to do, and other times they just want to be hateful. And even if reform were to be successful, which is a big if, the amount of time it would take would still mean that unreformed Greek life would exist for years to come and continue to harm many Northwestern students. It's like if instead of defeating Thanos, the Avengers invited him to weekly tea parties. Sure, he might eventually stop killing people, but that would only be after a few more years of, killing people. And let's be honest, successful reform just isn't that likely to begin with. That only leaves one viable option: abolition. Unfortunately, local chapters at Northwestern face numerous obstacles on the path towards abolition. According to an admin of the Abolish NU Greek Life Instagram account, each chapter has its own rules and processes for disbanding, meaning some require votes from alums, others need letters or petitions, some have multiple stages of voting or require unanimous voting, and some are not allowed to hold vote to disband at all. With these challenges, we see something emblematic of one of the largest problems with this system, and it's that the members do not have power. What kind of fucked up institution would make it so hard to vote? Gamma Phi Beta, or G Phi, is the only sorority at Northwestern that has successfully managed to disband. They suspended their charter after a majority chapter vote and countless letters to internationals, who eventually approved their decision. Even after this long and arduous process, GPHI internationals made it clear that they retain the right to recolonize Northwestern's chapter, which creates the possibility for GPHI to return to Northwestern in the future. Greek organizations call new chapters colonies and use the word recolonize to describe the process of reestablishing a chapter at a specific university. And it really does say something that these Greek organizations are so easily throwing around these monikers of white supremacy and colonialism. Specifically, it says, "Hi, we're rooted in white supremacy and we really don't care, do you?" Just listen to what one student respondent had to say after joining Greek life with the best of intentions. Quote, "The roots and institutions of Greek life are skewed against those that do not occupy the most privileged sectors in society. I entered with the intention of breaking said institutions, but when you're up against decades of oppression, you're bound to lose." Of course, one person doesn't stand a chance against decades of oppression. That's like if insert joke here. Seriously, guys? I know this thing is 14 hours long, but you could have at least proofread it. Travis Martin explained that while Northwestern might not have the ability to completely abolish Greek life with the push of a button, the school does have the power to make a decision whether or not to recognize these organizations. In addition to not recognizing Greek life, Northwestern administration has the power to financially divest from it. As Doug Feierberg explains, they can stop promoting it on their website, properly warn students about the many risks of Greek life, especially fraternities which aren't dry like sororities, and refuse to provide any kind of financial or promotional assistance for processes like recruiting, or at least not provide anything more than what they provide to other official clubs. These are all things that can be done without officially abolishing Greek life, but which would essentially defund Greek life at the university level and decrease institutional support. The decisions to not recognize Greek organizations and financially divest from Greek life would fall upon President Morty Shapiro and the Board of Trustees. Although I'm not holding my breath on that one, given that the last time students asked the administration to dismantle racist systems, they pepper sprayed us. The other way to take down Greek life is to make it uncool and replaceable. Greek life is idealized as a necessary part of one's college experience, but if students are able to flip the script, then Greek life might lose its social standing and its power. Change is weird and scary, but it is how we get better. And if we have it stuck in our heads that bad things are permanent, then they have power. Greek life is not permanent. Just ask the ancient Greeks. One of the reasons that Greek life has existed for so long is that it promises students lasting friendships, social events, and mentorship. If we want to eliminate it, we need to replace it with clubs and affinity spaces that provide those same things, but ideally ones that don't boil your personality down to a number, which means the knitting club isn't an option. That's right, fuck you, Knitwestern. You shallow asshole said my stockinette stitch was amateurish. And your name isn't even a pun. The words knit and north aren't even phonetically similar. So we at the Deep End had an idea. As underclassmen, we've really missed getting to know the new students this year, and we know it must be pretty hard to make connections over Zoom. If you're an underclassman looking for some direction on how to navigate this insane institution, or an older student looking to impose your fucked up worldview on an 18-year-old, you can join the Deep End's Big Little program, where we match tall people with short people based on interests, personality, and, most importantly, height. If you're a really fucking tall freshman, we'll just match you with two short upperclassmen totem pole trench coat style to even things out. This is a real service that we are actually creating. Northwestern can be a lonely place, particularly if you're short and especially right now. And so we encourage our viewers to avoid the shit show that is Greek life and instead come to us. You can find the sign up on our Facebook page and Instagram. In the meantime, thanks for diving in with us. I'm Ariana Staten, and this has been The Deep End.